And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back for the third year in a row best-selling author Isabella Maldonado, here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new red hot book, A Killer's Game, the first book in the brand new Danny Vega series. Isabella, welcome back. Tell us about A Killer's Game.
Well, thank you. It's so great to be here. It's one of my favorite places to be. Um,
Yay.
this book is unlike anything I've ever written. I just took leave of my senses, threw caution to the wind, and went completely nuts. Part of it that inspired me was the whole escape room phenomenon that's going on. Everybody in cities all over the world, people are doing escape rooms. So I thought, well, let's just see what happens if there's a real escape room.
Oh my God. A real life, real terrifying escape
Yes.
room with killers on the loose. Oh my gosh. And a
Yes.
cryptographer on the
Yes.
case.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Well, best-selling author Isabella Maldonado, we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about. And I can't wait to get into every red hot, delicious bit of it. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching. So we are broadcasting live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So friends, no matter where you are watching from, Facebook or YouTube, you are in the right place. It is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be murder, we're going to make them a little less painful for you. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy. Here's the drill. You get to ask my best-selling guest anything about her books, about her practice, her writing practice, her incredible career as a real life police officer, and the first Latina to make a police captain in her division. So we have so much to talk about. Isabella, you are one of my favorite guests ever, and I'm so excited to welcome you back. So let's kick off with, this is the first book in a brand new series. Why are we switching series? Why are we switching protagonists? Tell us all the things.
Well, it's funny because you really do get attached to your protagonist. You really do. I know I do. And this is actually the third series that I've written, and each time it's always wrenching to leave another one. And I always say, there's nothing that says I can't go back and, write something else. But it was just like, it was time to think of something, completely different and wild and something like I've never done before. So that's, that is kind of what I thought about doing. And it's hard, but there it is.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you about this because I have loved all the books that you have written and all of the protagonists that you have introduced us to. And you did leave the door open there in your A Different Dawn with the Falcon, rather.
Yes.
You left the door open. You could go back, but I was so excited to get to know Daniela, aka Danny,
Yes.
and because she is a fun and fabulous and fascinating new character as well. So why did you want to make her a cryptographer? I've got to know.
Well, part of it is, again, it was the idea behind it was the escape room phenomenon. So I thought, if you're going to make, a real escape room with deadly consequences, you're going to need someone who is totally up to the task. So I thought about it and I thought, well, yeah, someone with a background in cryptography would be really good because you have to crack the clues and solve the puzzles and everything. But then I also thought about it. And I thought, she's going to need some major skills because she gets trapped in this escape room. And it's not like, I don't want anyone to get the idea that, it's basically kind of this, this leisurely Sherlockian case study here at all. I mean, it's very action oriented. So I needed someone who would be up to the challenge. And also, when she's trapped in this labyrinth, she's trapped in there with 12 mercenaries.
Yes.
So, yeah, and they're all trying to kill her while she's also trying to survive. And she's also on an undercover assignment. So she's trying not to break her cover. And they think she's another mercenary. And so, she's an undercover agent. So, I'm like, who could do all that? And then I thought about it. I thought, the military would give you that kind of background because they have cryptographers in the military, and they also have, a lot of military training. And then I thought, well, she has to be kind of really elite. And so I did some research, and I found out, I was so excited and so proud of these women when I found out there are actually female Army Rangers. And so I thought, I want to celebrate these women who have been able to, they do not make there's not like a special female Army Ranger unit or something. They have to meet all of the same qualifications. There are very few women who've been able to do it because they do have to do everything just like a man would do.
Wow.
They do not lower the standards at all. And I found out that the first female Army Rangers to pass through the full Ranger School was in 2017. And then the first female Rangers who saw combat was in 2019. So I, wanted to make her one of these women. And so it was talk about a cool character, totally different from anybody I've written. But so she has that background, and then she got out of the military and then joined the FBI. So she's new to the FBI, but she has a great background.
I love her. I love her background. She's in New York. She's getting her coffee, #relatable, when there is a hit right there. And all of a sudden Agent Vega is on the case, except very much involved in this, as you said, escape room situation under the leadership of this colonel character leading these mercenaries. It's so freaking cool, Isabella. And yes. I love knowing that. So a fun fact, everybody, Isabella was the first Latina to make captain in her police department, and was handpicked to go to the FBI, the National FBI Academy in Quantico. So this lady is no stranger to law enforcement and to FBI training. So for me, what makes a book extra cool is when it's written by someone with real life experience so that infusing all of those details in it, so that I know that things are real. So that's one of the many, many reasons that I absolutely love all of your books. I'm so excited for this one to come out in just 2 weeks. Yeah. John Hebert, welcome to the conversation, joining us from Northeast Ohio. John, welcome. So great to have you. And let us know if you have any questions for Isabella. Suzanne, welcome to the conversation. She says, Isabella is a favorite of mine. I've been reading her book since the very first one. Suzanne, me too. So tell me what you love about Isabella's books. I know what I love. So Isabella, I want to get into some of the amazing, research and praise that this book has earned. So let's start with the research. So how did you learn about these Army Rangers?
Well, I had to do a lot of research. And as a matter of fact, over on my bookshelf, I should have had it in my hand, but I have the manual that is printed by the U.S. Army for the Rangers, the Ranger Manual, and then also some other books written, by and for the Rangers. I just, did what I usually do. I do have a background in law enforcement, but not in military. So it's certainly not in special forces. So I thought, I really do need to make sure that I do the research, because I really wanted to honor those who do that kind of incredibly difficult work. So I looked at their training manuals, and I could see, how is it that they go in and search a room, for example, because it's different from how police do it. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, especially with some of the things that different special forces units have been tasked with doing over the years, they now do more of the kind of urban warfare kind of thing. So they do things like police end up doing when they're overseas, and let's say there's a stronghold or something, and they have to go in and clear it out. How do they go about doing that? And that is the kind of thing that I had my Ranger character, she ends up teaming up with someone. And so she has to kind of explain to him, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And it's interesting because the Rangers work as a team, as a unit. And she's basically locked in there with a bunch of people who are all just mercenaries and killers, and they're all out for themselves. And they don't have any honor like what she has. She's used to working with honor. And so it really is a challenge, a very serious challenge for her.
Yeah, a very serious challenge, not to mention the fact that she ends up paired with a very unexpected partner in crime. Um, so I was fascinated by this. My sister is actually in the Army, not in the Army Rangers, but she's a captain in the Army. So I was very fascinated to learn. I didn't know anything about the Army Rangers. I actually had not heard of the Army Rangers. So that's not the division my sister's in. And so I was fascinated to learn all of this. And I love knowing that you did all of this research, which of course you did, because your research is always amazing. Oh my goodness, we have award-winning author Tracy Clark in the chat.
Wow.
Yay. Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for joining us. Tracy says, wicked research, props.
Yes.
Exactly. So Isabella, how long did it take you to do all of this research?
It took months. Each of my book, I do have a book out a year, and really it's even a little closer. They come out about 10 months apart. So I have to spend months doing the research. And I know Tracy can appreciate what I'm talking about, because I know she does the same thing. The writers do that if you want to write authentically, and of course you do. It takes months. And sometimes as I'm writing, I will run into a situation where I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I got to research, how would a ranger handle this situation? And, I have to stop what I'm doing and then look it up really quickly. Other times, another trick of the trade, you have to put in like a little, I put in a couple of X's. I put XX in there, and it's a note for me to come back and fix it, look it up, get the details, whatever. And I did that with New York City. I had to research New York City. And so I traveled to New York City and, went to all the different places and everything. But sometimes I had to put XX in there to make sure that I got like the right subway line or the right corner or whatever, because all the New Yorkers will call me out if I get it wrong. They would.
Yeah, because I was also noticing that, because I remember when you were at Thriller Fest, when we were at Thriller Fest last year, you had to leave because you were like, yes, I got to take the subway from where, this one scene in my book takes, and I got to see what the subway stop looks and see what the street looks like. And I got to take it to this other neighborhood and see what that's like and see what the street's like in the traffic direction. I mean, you are really doing the work, getting boots on the ground to get fully into that. And I noticed all of those. And what I think many people may not realize is that those hours of research that it took to map the streets and go, smell what the subway smells like and take it to the street is just one, not even a whole sentence. It's just a passing
exactly
reference.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
I think Hollywood's the same way. When they do movies, they do all this incredible research, and it's just something that's like in the background that you may not even pay attention to, but they spend so much time getting it right. It's like that. It's similar.
Oh my gosh. Well, it is clearly working for you, whatever your Maldonado magic is. Number one New York Times bestselling author Meg Gardiner had some wonderful words of praise. Let's take a peek at that. She says the book is intense, gripping, and compulsively readable. A killer's game goes from 0 to 90 on page 1, and it never slows down. FBI agent Danny Vega is a heroine to choose for, tough, inventive, and highly capable. She deems this book a winner. Congratulations on that amazing review from the amazing Meg Gardiner. Isabella, this is so exciting. So let me ask you this. Without giving anything away, obviously, what was the hardest scene to write or the hardest character to write? And what is your favorite scene in the book?
Well, I tell you, some of the challenges that were hard to write is the puzzles and the traps and things that she's confronted with. When you're in escape room, it has to be something that is very challenging, so that the readers, you don't want to insult their intelligence by having something really, lame. It has to be something really tough and challenging, but yet actually solvable. It can't just be a fake puzzle. And I wanted to write it so that the reader could go through and potentially solve it themselves if they wanted to. I do provide the answers, but I also went ahead and made it so that if you want to, you can stop reading and try to solve it. And so inventing those, it isn't like I could use someone else's puzzles. I had to create my own, and I wanted them each to be individually completely different. One was, like a word rhyme, and another one was, had to do with numbers and mathematical equation. Another one had to do with just basically knowledge of, world knowledge and stuff, historical information. So it's like each thing was different. And then at the very end, there was a code that you might be able to crack and stuff. So yeah, everything was different. Each puzzle was completely different. And that was definitely a challenge because I literally had to create those puzzles. And I had to, especially, one of them in particular, I remember I would send them out to other people and say, see if you solve this, it's a logic puzzle. I said, if you solve this logic puzzle, it's kind of like, do you know which door you can go through, as an example? And, and I would get different answers, and then they would tell me, no, there's not enough information. So I kept having to go through it until finally I had it written so that if you wanted to, you could solve the logic puzzle, as an example. But that took weeks of effort.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine. And because as I was reading, and I did take the time to try to solve the puzzles, like I would pause and see, because I actually love puzzles. I was remembering that in the Cipher, you also had, puzzles of where the killer was going to different cities and leaving clues. Yes. Do you love puzzles? Are you a puzzle fanatic?
I do. And as a matter of fact, in my research, I found out that the reason I think that people have always loved puzzles, everything from, like crossword puzzles and, junior jumbles when you're a kid, and, anagrams, and people throughout history have enjoyed different kinds of puzzles. And the reason why is because it's hardwired in the human brain to want to extrapolate. The human brain from prehistoric times, if you did not have the ability to look at your environment and then take a small amount of information and extrapolate to a larger amount of information, you were going to be weeded out of the gene pool. You had to be, and so humans were sort of encouraged in this way through natural selection to be curious and to want to be problem solvers, because this is how you figured out what was good to eat, what's not good to eat, what animals, were more of a danger, what animals you might be able to form an alliance with, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, if you didn't have any imagination, you would die out.
I did not know that. I am fascinated. Thank you so much for sharing that, Isabella. I'm learning so much again. Alan, welcome to the conversation. He wants to know, Isabella, when did you first know you would become a writer after your career in law enforcement? How did you come to that decision? Great question, Alan.
Yes. I always joke about, it's like after being in law enforcement, I went to the dark side and became a writer. But I kind of always knew I wanted to write fiction, in particular from the time that I was like a young girl. But I felt like as a young person, I didn't really have enough life experience to really tell the kind of stories I wanted to tell. Some people manage to do it. They're like 19 years old and they write an amazing story and it takes the world by storm. But that wasn't me. I just felt like at that age, I didn't really have enough to say. So I went ahead and after 22 years in law enforcement, I had plenty to say, a lot of life experience of all kinds of different varieties. I saw all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so after that, when I retired, I said, I still want to go back to this idea of I still want to write. So I took 5 years to study the art and craft of writing before I attempted to write the very first novel.
Wow. Alan, thank you for the wonderful question. Isabella, thank you for the fabulous answer. And thank you for sharing also that you did take 5 solid years to really devote to learning the craft of writing. Because I think that's something that a lot of people gloss over, like, and voila, here's this, poof, here she is, she hath appeared. And actually it's, it's a lot of learning, and how that you come to that learning may vary, but the learning curve is always intense. Something else that you had shared with me in one of our prior interviews, Isabella, was that you had said that in your career in law enforcement, one thing that you had noticed in the many interrogation rooms that you had sat in, and the many suspects that you had interrogated, that not one ever saw themselves as the bad guy, that every single person had always seen themselves, the perpetrators had seen themselves as the victim. And I think about that quote I think about that all the time because I'm so fascinated to think about that. Could you, for those who may not have been with us in those first interviews, can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. And it's really is truly fascinating. And it was quite a revelation for me. But after I figured this out, so many things in my life, even all the way going back to elementary school, made so much more sense, because even as little kids, you'll see a kid picking on another kid and you're like, how can you do that, to somebody else? How can you do? And that it all just made so much more sense. And in talking to them and the way that I learned it is this, it's part of brain science, and it's called cognitive dissonance, which is basically you can't adjust to something that makes no sense. Your mind will rebel against it. So if you look in the mirror and you think to yourself, I am a horrible, evil person, and obviously I'm a criminal and I kill people and I'm horrible, your brain just rebels against that. And so what will happen is to prevent your brain from going through that, you will learn to see yourself in a different way. And the way that I put it is everyone is the hero of their own story. So when these people, no matter the horrible things they do, when they are by themselves and they look in the mirror or they go to bed and they're going to go to sleep at night and they have those moments where their brain is just sort of reviewing everything, they will paint things in a way that makes it that, they did what they had to do, or they had a good reason for doing what they did, or they were the one who was strong enough to do it. Everybody else is just too weak to do what really needs to be done. They have ways, and it's fascinating the endless ways they have of justifying what they do to themselves. And it comes out when you are interviewing them during an interrogation. That's when you finally get them to confess. A lot of times they won't, but the ones who finally do will explain to you that they did it because of all these various reasons and that they really are not a horrible person.
Wow. I mean, I think about that all the time, Isabella. I think about that all the time. I mean, it's so fascinating.
And I think it helps me to write a better character as far as the villains go. A lot of people have told me that. They're like, whenever I read, because I write multiple point of view, so there's always some chapters in the bad guy's head, or bad gal, as the case may be, whichever. But there's always various chapters in that person's point of view. And it really helps me, that experience of dealing with the criminal element and how they think really has helped me to write a very compelling villain, because you get to feel how they justified it. And several people have written to tell me that they almost feel sorry for the person, almost.
Exactly. I was going to say that because it is interesting, because when you, as a reader of an Isabella Maldonado book, you are very clear on who the bad guy is. Yeah. And yet, because of the multi-layered, compassionate, deep understanding with which you render these characters, you almost do, because you start to see them in this way that you have very skillfully painted. And that is one of the other many things that I love about a Maldonado book. Alan saying, we are so glad you followed through your childhood dream of writing so that we are able to enjoy your books. Well said, Alan. Thank you so much.
Nice.
George, welcome to the conversation, saying, I made it. I'm late, but I made it. Good evening. I can't wait to start a new author. Yes, George, welcome to the conversation. You are going to love real life police captain Isabella Maldonado turned USA Today bestselling author Isabella Maldonado. George is a voracious reader, joining us live from Texas. George, so great to have you as always. George is saying yes. Yay, welcome. He's adding to what you just said, that self-justification is both worrisome and yet diabolical. Fascinating.
It is true. And it's happened throughout history. If you think about it, anyone who studied history, look at the atrocities that people have committed against other people, and they're all able to justify, whole societies have been able to justify various atrocities. So yes, I think George has nailed it. It is diabolical and also worrisome. You can get people to do almost anything with using those kind of techniques.
Well said. Well said. Suzanne, welcome to the conversation, saying, yes, they blame everyone else and make you feel like they were wronged. So, Isabella, bring us into that moment when you're sitting in the interrogation room with them and you're hearing this justification. Did you ever have the desire to try to make them see the light, to say, no, what you've done is wrong and here's why, or you just know you're never going to get through these people and why waste your breath?
Yeah, you're not going to get through. And actually, when you are in law enforcement and you're doing those kind of interrogations, one of the things that they train you first in interrogation school. Do you teach interrogation school, by the way? You probably should.
I would co-teach that with you, Isabella Maldonado.
But one of the things that they teach you first is to not be judgmental at all. Because again, they will say the craziest things to justify what they do. And the minute that you show them any kind of judgment, like, you are disgusting, I can't believe you did this, you make me sick. It's kind of funny because sometimes you see that on television shows where the detective be like, you make me sick, you're a piece of scum, whatever. Well, you know what? You'll never get a confession that way. And the whole idea is that you really do want to try to get a confession. And the reason why is because you can help to spare the victim, or if it's a murder case, the victim's family, the court trial. If there is a confession and it's a good, solid confession and they knowingly and willingly give it, then it spares so much pain and suffering for the family's victims. And I guess, honestly, taxpayer dollars on a lengthy trial. And I mean, there's so many reasons why it is really to everybody's benefit if you can get them to confess. But the only way to do it is you kind of have to lean into that. When you start to hear them begin to justify, that's when you know they're getting ready to start telling you the truth as they see it and why they did it. So you have to kind of lean into it. You have to step back from it and just allow that. And you just kind of are like, you minimally encourage them, nodding your head, I understand, or if you don't understand, then you just say, I see what you're saying. And you just give them a minimal sort of encourager and let them continue talking. And then they'll eventually get it all out, but not if you're judging them, calling them names and telling them they're disgusting.
So you literally have to smile and nod to keep them talking.
Kind of, yeah. Even though they're telling you something that is just appalling. You have to put your game face on and you have to hide that. And then later, if you want to, you can go back to the locker room and you can scream and yell about how horrible they were. And you can't believe what a disgusting person they are, but you just don't say it in front of them.
Suzanne would like to know, is this a good cop, bad cop thing? So is that a real thing, Isabella? Is this something that I love to watch Law and Order. Is that a TV cop thing, or is that a real thing?
Well, there are variations of that are used. I mean, it's such a trope now that even the suspects are familiar with it. But we do tag team during interviews quite a bit. It's not quite as obviously the good cop, bad cop thing because they're almost expecting that at this point because it's been so used. But we do like to sometimes have, we have two people in the room a lot, and usually one person they may relate to more than another. And you kind of you learn to interpret the body language. And then as you see that they seem to be finding a more sympathetic ear, or they're connecting more with one of you or the other one will kind of take more of a back seat and kind of, step down a bit. And sometimes it has to do with your personality. Other times it has to do with things that are completely beyond your control. Like, for example, sometimes being a woman, I would be in the room, and sometimes that would work to my advantage, and sometimes it would work to my disadvantage, depending on what was going on in the mind of the person that I was talking to. There were some people that they had no interest in talking to a woman. Other people felt like a woman would be much more sympathetic to whatever it is they had to say. So, you learn to work with what you've got and to deal with who is sitting in front of you.
Wow. And that is regardless of the gender of the perpetrator.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. George saying, is this the old let them speak and they'll give themselves all the rope they need? Is
Yes.
Can you get them talking and then they just, yes. Wow. Okay.
That is true. And, there's a couple of things that you learn, a couple of techniques, and he's obviously aware of some of them, we can tell. But, one of them is to not interrupt. When they get started, you do not interrupt. And sometimes they may really meander and go off into a completely unrelated, but that's telling you other information that you need to know. And like, as an example, I'm thinking of a particular case that I knew about where you were asking, you would ask the person, what did you do today? Let's say there was a murder that was committed that day. And the guy will start talking about, everything from getting up out of breakfast. He'll describe, exactly what the flavor of the cereal was and how he was almost out of milk. And then he had to go and substitute some chocolate. I mean, he goes into all this insane detail about that. And then the next thing you know, then like in the next sentence, he's like, yeah. And then I was, I was really tired and it was time for bed. So it's like, okay. So you just glossed over a huge chunk of the day. And it's not because you don't know how to tell a detailed account. It's because you were very comfortable telling me what happened up until the point where you killed the person. Then, you get all worried because you're like, ooh, anything I say could be incriminating. So you just gloss over and you skip over hours and hours of time. And what that tells you is, okay, now at least I know the window of time I need to focus in on. Between this hour and this hour that he glossed over, this is where I need to start zeroing in. So that's one of the techniques that you learn. And another technique that you often learn during interview interrogation is to use silence strategically. So they will tell you something and then you just sort of look at them and you just look at them. And then you look at them some more. And part of this is another part of most human beings are social creatures, most of us. Everybody's a little different, but part of that sort of social contract when you're having an interaction is that you don't like to have these weird lapses in the conversation. And if there's a gap, that you will try to fill it. And so if you're willing to leave an awkward silence and wait, the person may be prompted to try to fill the awkward silence because they're afraid that they're looking more guilty if they just sit there and then they feel like, oh, I better start talking about something, and then they'll blurt something out and maybe not think too much about it.
So I am someone who fears the awkward silence, Isabella. I would sing like a freaking canary in an interrogation room. Like I would be like anything to avoid the awkward silence. So when you were sitting there, knowing that you had to let the silence stretch to see what they would fill it with, did you feel uncomfortable, or were you like, I could sit here all day?
No, I'm like you. I'm a social person. I'm an extrovert by nature. I am a social person. I'm friendly. I love people. I like being around people. I am extroverted. And I like conversation. I enjoy engaging in conversation. And so, it was very hard for me to do that and deliberately make it happen. And it was only the training and understanding that I'm applying a technique that allowed me to do it. But it was very difficult and very challenging for me as well.
Wow. I am loving this inside scoop. Alan saying many of these techniques are also common in taking depositions.
Yes, that is true. Attorneys are, first of all, they're so smart. They're just like some of the most intelligent people. And yeah, the ones who do take depositions, absolutely, it's true, because attorneys have to ferret out the truth as well. That is part of their job, is to find out what the truth is. They have to use these techniques.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I am loving this conversation. I'm learning a lot. Thank you. Isabella, the other thing I wanted to talk about, well, one of the many things I wanted to talk about was the Kirk is saying that Maldonado keeps the plot boiling and bodies dropping to the end. So a boiling plot and bodies dropping is my favorite kind of thing. So bodies, the sweet sound of bodies dropping. So let's talk about that. So first of all, you're 7 books in to your career. So what have you learned from book 1 to book 7 about how to keep the plot boiling and the bodies dropping to keep us hooked as readers?
That is true. And actually, it's kind of funny. And I thought it was an interesting quote from Kirkus when they said that, because literally in this book, you do have a body dropping on page 1. I mean, it's like, it starts off with somebody getting killed, like right there
He
in the
drops
streets
to
of
the
New York
sidewalk.
City, just dropping right on the sidewalk in Manhattan, and it's true. And it just like, and the body count just goes on and on. This one probably has a higher body count than anything, but they're all like assassins, so you don't cry quite as much over these guys. But anyway, but yeah, that is something that I did learn how to do. I like to write a thriller as opposed to a mystery. There is a little bit of a difference, with a mystery. It's more of a kind of a whodunit. And the way I like to think about it, a thriller is more of either a how done it or a why done it, but that's kind of the idea. And so sometimes with a thriller, you may know who did it right from the beginning. In one of my series, my first series, who the bad guy is on page 1, but it's trying to figure out how that's going to all, what's going to happen with it. So to me, I remember very, very early on, before I wrote my first book, someone had described a thriller to me as, well, with a thriller, you step on the gas and you never let your foot up off the pedal. And so I thought, that's kind of what I put in my head. And I'm like, this is what I have to do. And so literally that's how I write. And I'm very pleased, because so many people describe my books as page turners, and where they keep having to. So if it isn't a body dropping, I mean, I'm sort of joking about all that, but it doesn't always have to be a car chase and a gunfight and a body dropping. At the very least, though, you have to have the reader continually asking questions throughout the whole thing. What's going to happen next? Oh, wait a minute, what does this mean? Oh, hold on, what, he just said that? What's he going to do now? So as long as you have the reader very, very curious to know, have to know what's going to happen next, that also counts as a thriller too. It's like that suspense where you have to find out what's going to happen next. So I do that as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, Isabella, you're going to be speaking again at Thriller Fest in just 2 weeks. Tell us what you'll be speaking about.
So at Craft Fest, they asked me to teach a class, a block of instruction on the mind of a killer. And it's kind of funny, because some of the things that we talked about, I will be talking about there for the people who are going to be attending. And so I'll be able to talk about the research that I did, interviewing people and reading of the interviews of killers and how they think, why they do what they do, what is going on with them. And so some of this in more detail with handouts is what I will be sharing. And hopefully that will be helpful for authors who, and readers too, who want to appreciate the villain or the bad guy or the antagonist, whatever. I mean, they have slightly different meanings, but whatever the opposing force is, to have them appreciate that character on a different level is what I'm going to be talking about.
Ooh, well, I cannot wait.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, did you say you're bringing your real life notes?
I will be making notes and handouts.
Okay,
So
okay.
from my notes, I will be extrapolating from my notes to create handouts so that people will have something to take with them, because I think that's, part of what I want to offer to people is the opportunity to get some, experience from someone in law enforcement who, because not everybody has had that opportunity. And so to have them sort of see it from that point of view.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am so excited, and I will be sitting in on that class.
Oh, good. And you can get the handout too. That's good.
Come in for the handout,
Yes.
Professor Maldonado.
Right.
I'm reporting for duty.
Yes.
Y'all, the book is not even out yet. It is coming out in 2 weeks. Isabella is coming on with this exclusive pre-launch Q&A to take all of your most pressing questions. And you can pre-order the book tonight from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So no matter where you're watching from, Facebook or YouTube, here is that link. Click and pre-order your copy of A Killer's Game so that you too can immerse yourself in this escape room life or death escape room with Agent Danny Vega, and then you can solve all of these real life puzzles that Isabella took so much time to create. So this is this is where you order. Click and order, no matter where you're watching from, Facebook, on YouTube. You're not going to want to miss this book. George would like to know, Isabella, do you think you'll write a book with all the information that you talk about there?
That's an interesting idea. I haven't ever thought about that yet, but maybe I will have to, because I've given a couple of different blocks of instruction in different ways, in different parts of it. So, maybe that's not a bad idea to compile some of these lesson plans together, put it into a book.
Oh my goodness. That would be a book that I would be buying. Oh my goodness. Great idea. And if you write that book, I think you should maybe give a quick shout out to George, Isabella.
Yes, exactly. I'll have to put him in the acknowledgments for coming up with it.
Exactly. You saw the magic here. This is where it started, everybody, right here on Mystery and Thriller Mavens. So here is that link for Craft Fest if you want to come to New York and join Isabella for the Mind of a Killer. Sounds like exactly the kind of class that I would like to take. Yes. Y'all, we are out of time. We are actually over time. It has been such a great night hosting and hearing all of this fascinating information from you again, USA Today bestselling author Isabella Maldonado. The first book in her brand new Danny Vega series, A Killer's Game, out June 1st. Click and pre-order tonight, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will send this to you the day the book drops. Isabella, thank you so much for coming on and giving us the inside scoop. What a pleasure to host you again, and I can't wait to see you in 2 weeks at Thriller Fest.
Yes, I will be in New York with you. That's fantastic.
Can't wait. All right, everybody, that is a wrap on Mystery Monday. Have a great week ahead, and I will see you next week. Take very good care until then.